Blood streamed down her face, mingling with the icy rain that fell like tears from the sky. Valentina Costa lay in the dark alley, abandoned like disposable trash, her body broken and her soul shattered. They had left her to die. Her own uncle, the man who swore to protect her after her parents' death. She tried to scream for help, but no voice came out, only blood. And then she heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, dangerous, expensive shoes treading in puddles of dirty water. A man emerged from the shadows, tall and imposing, with old scars marking his face and eyes that had seen too much death. Adriano Nero, the name that made the entire city tremble. The most feared Mafia boss in Bella Vista. He should have walked right past. Men like him didn't save anyone. But when his eyes met hers, something changed. "Who did this to you?" he asked, his voice low as distant thunder. And when she whispered her uncle's name, something deadly gleamed in his gaze. "Then let's make sure he pays." This is the story of how a woman left for dead found salvation in the hands of the most dangerous man in the city, and how, together, they set the world on fire. The rain was relentless, falling in sharp blades that cut through skin and turned the streets of Bella Vista into rivers of mud and debris. Valentina Costa lay in the alley behind the financial district, where the glass and steel buildings reflected a city that never slept, but also never cared. The cold concrete seeped through her torn blouse, each raindrop a small agony against her bruised skin. Her left arm was broken. She was sure of it from the excruciating pain that shot to the bone every time she tried to move. Split lips, possibly fractured ribs, blood mixed with rainwater forming small red streams that disappeared into the cracks in the pavement. And worst of all, the betrayal that hurt more than any physical injury. 3 hours ago, she was in the Sterling and Associates law office, wearing her most expensive business suit. The navy blue one her father always said made her look confident and professional. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the leather briefcase containing all the documents she had gathered over the years. Today was her 23rd birthday. Today, everything should have come back to her. The import company her father, Roberto Costa, built from scratch over 30 years of honest work. The family fortune accumulated through sweat and smart decisions. The Victorian house in the hills where she grew up, where she could still smell her mother's perfume in the hallways. Everything. Her uncle, Lorenzo Costa, had been appointed legal guardian of everything after the sudden death of her parents 5 years ago. A car accident, they said. Tires that blew out on the winding mountain road. The car plunged off the cliff, exploding in flames before anyone could reach it. Valentina was only 18 when she received the news. 18 and completely alone in the world, except for Lorenzo, her father's younger brother, who appeared at the funeral with kind words and promises to take care of her until she came of age. But when the lawyer, Thomas Sterling, opened the folder with a constrained expression that morning, the words that came out of his mouth were like knives burying themselves in his chest. "Miss Costa, I'm afraid to inform you that there have been complications. The documents have been altered. Your uncle Lorenzo is now the legal owner of all the assets." The world seemed to tilt beneath Valentina's feet. She gripped the edge of the mahogany table, her knuckles turning white. "This is impossible. My father left everything documented. I saw the original will with my own eyes. He showed it to me when I turned 18. Lorenzo was leaning back in his chair across the table, swirling a glass of expensive whiskey, even though it was only 10 in the morning. His eyes gleamed with something that made Valentina's stomach churn, a barely contained glint of triumph. "My dear niece, things have changed in the last 5 years. Your father was in debt when he died, deeply in debt. I saved the company. I invested my own money. I worked day and night to keep it afloat. It's only fair that it's mine now." "Lies!" Valentina hissed, rising so abruptly that the chair fell backward with a thud that echoed through the silent room. "My father never had any debts. He showed me the accounting books. The company was sound. You're stealing from me." Lorenzo had also stood up, all pretense of civility slipping from his face like a mask being ripped off. What remained was something far uglier, far more dangerous. "Watch what you say, girl. You have nothing. You have no one. Your parents are dead. No friends. No family besides me. And if you keep causing trouble, you'll end up just like them." The words had hit Valentina like a physical punch, stealing the air from her lungs. She stared at her uncle, truly seeing him for the first time. The coldness in his eyes, the cruel smile playing on his lips. "What did you say?" "You heard me perfectly." Lorenzo leaned closer, his voice lowering to a venomous whisper only she could hear, though the lawyer was just feet away, looking uncomfortably at his papers. That car accident wasn't as accidental as you think. Your father was getting inconvenient, asking too many questions about certain operations I was conducting, threatening to go to the police, so I resolved the problem, permanently. The casual confession, uttered as if commenting on the weather, shattered something fundamental within Valentina. The fury that erupted within her was blind and absolute. She lunged at him, her nails searching his eyes, screams tearing from her throat. "You killed my parents! Murderer! Monster! I'll destroy you! I'll expose everything you've done!" Lorenzo's bodyguards had appeared instantly, as if they had been waiting on the other side of the door. Large men with expressionless faces and hands that knew how to hurt. They snatched her from Lorenzo, holding her arms tightly enough to leave purple marks. While she struggled and screamed, Lorenzo wiped a scratch on his cheek where Valentina's nails had managed to tear his skin, observing his own blood on his fingers with a disgusted expression. "Take her," he ordered coldly, "and make sure she learns her lesson about respect. But don't kill her. Not yet. I want her to live knowing she's lost everything, that there's nothing she can do. Let her live long enough to feel utter despair." They dragged her out of the building through the service exit, away from prying eyes. They threw her into a black van with no windows. And then, as the city blurred past through the narrow cracks, they beat her, systematically, coldly, professionally, not to kill her, but to break her spirit, to make her understand that she had no power, no voice, nothing. When they finally stopped in an abandoned alley behind a set of empty warehouses and threw her out like a sack of trash, Valentina was barely conscious. "Boss said to make sure you learned your lesson," one of them spat, before delivering one last kick to her already fractured ribs. "Shut up. Forget about this inheritance. Forget about your family. And if we hear your name again, next time we'll throw you in the river with concrete under your feet. Understand?" Valentina couldn't answer. She only groaned softly as the pain exploded through her body. Then they left, the roar of the van's engine fading into the distance, and Valentina was left alone with the rain and the darkness, and the pain that threatened to pull her into unconsciousness. She tried to stand. Her arms trembled with the effort, but gave way immediately. She tried to scream for help, but her voice was only a hoarse whisper, blood bubbling at her split lips. People passed by on the main street at the end of the alley, hurried shadows under umbrellas, no one looking into the dark corners where bad things happened. This was Bella Vista. People learned early on not to get involved. "I'm going to die here," Valentina thought with a strange, distant clarity that comes when the mind separates from the body to protect itself from pain, alone, with no one who cares, exactly as Lorenzo wanted. He will win. He will steal everything my parents built, and no one will ever know the truth. The rage that pulsed through her at that thought was hot and fierce, but not strong enough to make her body obey. She couldn't move. She could barely breathe. The cold was penetrating deep now, making her shiver violently, which only worsened the pain in her ribs. Hypothermia, the clinical part of her mind observed. She would die of exposure before her injuries even killed her. But then, she heard footsteps. Unlike the other hurried pedestrians, these were slow, measured, deliberate, stopping right at the entrance to the alley as if the owner had all the time in the world and had specifically chosen to look in that direction. Valentina forced her swollen eyes open, blinking through the rain and blood that obscured her vision. A man stood there, illuminated from behind by the dim, flickering light of a lamppost, and the broken street created a silhouette that seemed both protective and menacing. He was tall, over 6 feet, with broad shoulders beneath a dark wool coat that probably cost more than the monthly rent for the apartment where Valentina lived, before Lorenzo took that away too. As he approached, deliberately walking into the alley, Valentina managed to see his face, strong, all sharp angles and hard lines, a square jaw covered by a neatly trimmed beard, a nose that had been broken at least once and healed slightly crooked, dark hair combed back, wet from the rain. But it was his eyes that caught Valentina's attention, dark as burning coals, intense in a way that made you feel he saw right through all your defenses, all your secrets, straight to your soul, and marking his face, an old scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw, white against his tanned skin. Adriano Nero. The name came to Valentina's mind even through the fog of grief. She had seen his face in the news, always obscured, always in the background of photos about organized crime and police investigations that never led anywhere. The Mafia boss who controlled half of Bella Vista, the man politicians feared to mention, and rivals disappeared around. Whispers said he was ruthless, brutal, that he had built his empire on blood and ashes. And now he was kneeling beside her in the dirty alley, removing his own coat and placing it over her shoulders, trembling with a gentleness that completely contradicted his reputation. The coat was still warm from his body, and Valentina instinctively snuggled into it, though she knew she should be terrified. "Who did this to you?" he asked, his voice deep and controlled, but with a sharp edge hidden beneath the surface. It wasn't anger. It was something colder, more dangerous, pure calculation. Valentina tried to answer, but only coughed up blood. Adriano waited patiently, unhurriedly, as if he had all the time in the world to wait for a broken woman in an alley to find her voice. He pulled a silk handkerchief from his pocket, gently wiping the blood from the corner of her mouth with surprisingly delicate movements. My uncle," she finally managed to whisper, each word agonizing. "Lorenzo Costa. He stole my inheritance. He killed my parents. He left me here to die." Something changed in Adriano's expression. He wasn't exactly angrier. He became colder, more calculating, more utterly, terribly dangerous. A subtle but unmistakable transformation that made even Valentina, broken and dying as she was, feel a shiver of primal fear. This was a man who knew how to kill, who had probably killed many times. And now he was deciding what to do with the information she had just given him. "Lorenzo Costa," Adriano repeated as if testing the name. "Da Costa Import and Export?" Valentina nodded weakly, the movement causing her vision to blur dangerously. "It belonged to my family. My father built it. From scratch. Lorenzo stole it all. I know that name." Adriano's voice was neutral, but his eyes had grown even colder. "He owes money to the wrong people. He's using his company as a front for operations he shouldn't be involved in. He's made enemies." A deliberate pause. "Including me." He stood up in a fluid movement, pulling his cell phone from an inside pocket. He dialed a number from memory, never taking his eyes off Valentina's bruised face, as if he feared she might disappear if he blinked. "Marco, I need you in the alley behind Vittorio Street, near the abandoned warehouses. Bring the car and the doctor. Now. No questions, just come." "Why are you helping me?" Valentina whispered, confusion mixing with pain and overwhelming exhaustion. "You don't even know me." Adriano put the phone away, crouching down again to look her directly in the eyes. His gaze was intense, penetrating, but not cruel. "Do you want the truth?" "Always. Because men like Lorenzo Costa are a cancer in this city. They take what isn't theirs. They hurt the weak to feel powerful, and they think they can get away with it because they have money and connections." Her voice lowered, becoming even more dangerous. "But more importantly, I met your father once. Years ago, at a business meeting about import licenses. Roberto Costa. He was honest in a city of liars. Rare. Valuable. He refused to participate in schemes that would have given him easy profits because they weren't ethical." A pause. "And honest men don't deserve to have their daughters left to die in alleys." Valentina's eyes filled with tears that weren't just of pain. "He talked about you sometimes. He said there were dangerous men in Bella Vista, but that not all of them were bad, that some had codes, honor. His father was too lenient in his judgments, but there was something like fleeting pain on Adriano's face. He didn't deserve what happened. "Lorenzo killed my parents," Valentina repeated, needing to say the words aloud, to have someone witness the truth. "He sabotaged their car, made it look like an accident, and today he confessed. He laughed in my face and confessed." Adriano's jaw clenched so tightly that Valentina could see the muscle throbbing. "Then we'll make sure he pays for every drop of blood, for every tear, for every year you lost." A black car glided silently into the alley, so silent that Valentina didn't hear it until it was right beside them. A man got out, robust and efficient, with a medical kit in his hand and an expression that showed no surprise at finding his boss kneeling beside an injured woman in an alley. Marco, Valentina presumed. He asked no questions, only began to examine her wounds with surprisingly gentle hands for someone who clearly knew how to inflict harm, as well as heal it. Broken left arm, fractured ribs, at least 3, moderate concussion, possible internal bleeding. Marco reported to Adriano with clinical efficiency. "She needs to go to the hospital. Immediately." "No hospital," Adriano said immediately, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Lorenzo will have people watching all the hospitals in the city. She'll disappear before she receives treatment. Adriano, she needs... Take her home. You can treat her there. You have enough equipment. Marco hesitated for only a second, then nodded. He clearly disagreed, but he knew his boss well enough not to argue. Adriano slid his arms under Valentina, one under her knees and the other around her back, lifting her with an ease that spoke of a strength his expensive suit concealed well. She should have been scared. She should have protested. Men like Adriano Nero didn't save people out of kindness. There was always a price. There was always a hidden agenda. But as he led her to the car, every muscle in his body screaming in protest at the movement, all Valentina could feel was an overwhelming relief that someone had finally stopped. Someone had seen. Someone cared enough not to walk by. As the car glided smoothly through the wet streets of Bella Vista, Valentina struggled to keep her eyes open, watching the city lights blur through the darkened windows. Adriano sat beside her, one hand holding hers with surprising gentleness, as if afraid of hurting her further. Marco drove silently, occasionally glancing in the rearview mirror with a worried expression. "Sleep if you need to," Adriano said softly. "You're safe now." "No one is safe from Lorenzo," Valentina murmured, her conscience beginning to slip. "You are safe with me, and that's all that matters now." Those were the last words Valentina heard before darkness finally claimed her, dragging her into a sleep that was more collapse than rest. But for the first time in 5 years, since her parents died, she slept knowing that someone was watching over her, that someone cared whether she lived or died. And in the fog of her fading consciousness, she wondered if perhaps, just perhaps, this was the beginning of something that could save not only her life, but her soul. Hello, dear souls. Thank you so much for being here and supporting this channel. Your presence means the world to me. If you're new here or haven't subscribed yet, click the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Comment below where you're listening from. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Valentina woke with the sensation of floating, which was so at odds with the pain she expected that for a moment she thought she was dead. But then the pain returned with force, shooting through her ribs, throbbing in her arm, pulsing in her head. She groaned softly, trying to move, and immediately regretted it when every nerve in her body protested. "Don't move." The voice was feminine, gentle, but firm. "You have 3 fractured ribs, a broken arm, a moderate concussion, and extensive bruising. Movement will only make things worse." Valentina forced her eyes open. She was in a huge bed, so soft it felt like she was sinking into clouds. The surrounding room was spacious but unpretentious, decorated in neutral shades of gray and white. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out onto the city below, Bella Vista spreading like a carpet of lights even during the day. A woman of about 50 sat beside the bed, wearing a doctor's coat, her gray hair pulled back in an efficient bun. "Who?" Valentina began, her voice just a hoarse croak. "Dr. Elena Santos. I've worked for Adriano for 15 years. The woman held a glass of water with a straw, helping Valentina drink small sips. "You're in your penthouse. You were unconscious for almost 18 hours. 18. Valentina tried to sit up, but the pain exploded through her with such force that her vision blurred at the edges. "I told you not to move." Dr. Santos gently pushed her back onto the pillows. "Your body has been through significant trauma. It needs rest, not heroics. Lorenzo, he's being treated. Adriano has people watching over him. You're safe here." The doctor prepared a syringe. "I'm going to give you something for the pain. It will make you sleep again, but it's for the best." "I don't want to sleep. You need to heal." Adriano's voice came from the doorway. Valentina turned her head, ignoring the pain of the movement. He was leaning against the doorframe, wearing tailored trousers and a white shirt with rolled-up sleeves, looking tired but alert. "Lorenzo isn't going anywhere, but you won't help anyone if your body collapses. He'll know I'm alive. He'll look for me. Let him look." Adriano entered the room, approaching the bed. "He won't find it, and if he tries, he'll find out exactly why smart people don't mess with what's mine." "I am not yours," Valentina said, though without much conviction. "No." Adriano's eyes met hers. "But you're under my protection, and that's enough." Dr. Santos administered the injection before Valentina could protest any further. Almost immediately, she felt the warm mist of strong medication pulling her back to sleep. "I don't want to be weak," she murmured. "Resting isn't weakness," Adriano said, his voice sounding like it came from far away. "It's strategy. Lorenzo thinks you're broken. When you get back, prove him wrong." The words followed her into sleep, planting themselves deeply in her mind. Prove him wrong. Prove him wrong. Prove him wrong. The following days unfolded in a cycle of pain, medication, and slow, torturous recovery. Dr. Santos came twice a day, changing bandages, checking vital signs, adjusting dosages. Marco appeared periodically with reports for Adriano, speaking in code that Valentina didn't fully understand, but grasped enough. Lorenzo was looking for her. He had people checking hospitals, morgues, even police stations. But he wasn't searching in areas controlled by Adriano. Not even Lorenzo was that stupid. Adriano was a constant presence, not suffocating, but always there. He worked in an office adjacent to Valentina's room. The door opened so he could hear if she needed anything. Sometimes he brought work to the table next to her bed, documents scattered around, the phone ringing constantly. He conducted business in Italian, Russian, Mandarin, their languages flowing seamlessly into one another, with natural ease. "Where did you learn so many languages?" Valentina asked one afternoon, when the pain was under control enough for actual conversation. Adriano glanced up at a contract he was reviewing. "Necessity. My father believed in education. He sent me to the best schools in Europe, Oxford for economics, then the Sorbonne for international law." He smiled dryly. "Ironically, all that legitimate education made me much better in the illegitimate world. Why did you choose this?" Valentina gestured vaguely, meaning her criminal empire, her dangerous lifestyle. "I didn't choose it initially. It was chosen for me." Adriano put down the papers, leaning back in his chair. "My father ran a small operation, nothing compared to what it is now. When he died, he left debts, enormous ones, with people who don't accept bankruptcy as an excuse. I was 23 years old, a recent graduate, full of ideas about doing everything legitimately." His expression hardened. "I quickly learned that the world doesn't work according to textbook rules. You could have run away, started somewhere else. I could have, but my 2 younger sisters couldn't. They would have paid my father's debts in other ways." The cold fury that crossed her face made Valentina recoil slightly. "So I paid. And while I was paying, I learned the real rules. I built connections. I became indispensable. And when I finally settled the last debt, I discovered I had built something substantial. An empire. Your sisters? Safe, living in Switzerland under different names. One is a pediatrician, the other a teacher. They don't really know what I do. Only that I keep them safe and financially independent." Quiet pride colored her voice. "They have the lives my father wanted for us. Clean, honest, far from this. But you got stuck here. I chose to stay. There's a difference." Adriano stood up, walking to the window. "This world, however dark it may be, has rules, codes, and within those rules I can make a difference. Protect people that legitimate systems ignore. Punish predators that the courts never touch." He looked at her over his shoulder. "Like your uncle. Can you really help me get back what he stole?" "Yes, but it won't be quick or clean. Lorenzo has lawyers, connections, forged documents. We'll need to dismantle his empire piece by piece." Adriano turned completely to face her. "And you need to understand, Valentina, that once we start this, there's no going back. Lorenzo will retaliate. He'll try to kill you again, and next time it won't just be a beating. It will be bullets, poison, accidents that aren't accidents. He already killed my parents," Valentina said, her voice as hard as steel. "He's already taken everything that mattered. What more can he take from me? Your life, your humanity, your soul." Adriano approached the bed again. "Revenge has a price, and that price is often becoming as monstrous as those you hunt. So, are you going to help me or not?" A slow smile spread across Adriano's face, transforming his stern expression into something almost warm. "I will, but on my conditions. You do what I say when I say it. You don't act impulsively. You don't take unnecessary risks. And above all, you trust that I know what I'm doing. What if I don't trust you? Then you die, and Lorenzo wins. Simple as that." Valentina stared at him for a long moment, studying his face, searching for deceit. But all she saw was brutal sincerity. Adriano Nero wasn't pretending to be a savior. He was being exactly what he was, a dangerous man with his own agendas, which happened to align with hers at this moment. And somehow, that honesty was more comforting than any empty promise of selfless protection. "All right," she finally said. "Then teach me. Teach me to be strong enough to survive in your world." Adriano's smile widened. "Lesson 1. You're already stronger than you think. You wouldn't have survived that alley otherwise. Lesson 2. Strength isn't about muscles or weapons. It's about intelligence, patience, and perfect timing. Lesson 3. He paused, leaning closer. Never let your enemies see what you truly feel. Emotion is a tool, not a weakness, but only if you control it, instead of letting it control you. And Lorenzo? What do we do with him? First, you heal. Completely. I don't want you going into battle half broken. Adriano returned to his chair, resuming his paperwork. While you rest, I'll gather information. Every connection Lorenzo has, every dirty deal, every skeleton in every closet. When we're ready to act, it will be with complete knowledge and total preparation. How long? Weeks. Maybe months. I don't have months. You have to if you want to do this correctly. Her voice was firm but not cruel. Hasty revenge leads to mistakes, and mistakes lead to death. Have patience, Valentina. It's a more powerful virtue than you think. It was the most frustrating thing anyone could have said to her, but Valentina forced herself to nod, accepting the wisdom even though she hated it, because deep down, she knew he was right. She had one chance, just one, to make Lorenzo pay. She couldn't waste it because of impatience. 2 weeks passed. Dr. Santos removed the cast from Valentina's arm, replacing it with a lighter splint. Her ribs still ached, but not with that sharp, agonizing pain that took her breath away. The bruises on her face had faded from purple to yellowish green, unsightly but treatable. And for the first time since the alley, Valentina was able to walk across the rooftop without needing help. The space was revealing in ways she hadn't expected. It wasn't the Mons. It was an ostentatious luxury that she imagined dangerous men inhabited. It was elegant, but lived in. Books in various languages filled shelves from floor to ceiling. A cello sat in a corner near the window, polished but clearly used regularly. There was art on the walls, not expensive things to impress, but pieces that someone truly appreciated. A kitchen that showed signs of real use, not just for show. "Do you cook?" Valentina asked one night, finding Adriano preparing dinner. "I learned it as a child. My mother insisted that all her children learn to take care of themselves." He was chopping vegetables with surgical precision. "Sit down. The food will be ready in 20 minutes. Valentina settled onto a stool at the counter, watching him work. There was something almost meditative about how he moved around the kitchen, each action precise and efficient. "Don't you have any servants?" "I do, but I don't live here. This is my private space. People don't come in unless I allow it." He slipped noodles into boiling water. "Much of what I do requires absolute trust. And absolute trust is rare, so I keep my circle small. Marco. Marco has been my best friend since childhood. He saved my life 3 times. I saved his 5. We have the kind of loyalty that can't be bought or forced." Adriano began preparing the sauce, aromas of garlic and tomato filling the air. Dr. Santos treated my mother in the last months of her life. He refused to accept payment from a family that couldn't afford it. When my mother died, I swore that Elena would never have to worry about money again. "And me? Why did you let me into your circle?" Adriano stopped stirring the sauce, looking directly at her. "Because you reminded me that there are still people in this world worth saving. And because," he hesitated, something vulnerable crossing his face, "because when I looked at you in that alley, I saw something of myself, someone left to die by the family that should have protected him. Someone who deserved a chance to fight back." The words hung in the air between them, laden with meaning neither was ready to fully acknowledge. Valentina looked at this man, this dangerous criminal who had stopped in an alley when everyone else walked right past, and felt something shift in her chest. Not love, not yet, but the beginning of something that could become that. The dinner itself was a revelation. Not just the food, which was spectacular, but the conversation. Adriano was incredibly well-read, fluent in philosophy and history, as much as in criminal strategy. They discussed Machiavelli, and whether the ends justified the means. They debated codes of honor in lawless worlds. And slowly, Valentina began to see beyond the mask he showed to the world. "Do you play?" she asked afterwards, gesturing towards the cello. "Every night. It helps clear my mind." He seemed to hesitate. "Would you like to hear?" Valentina nodded, curiosity overcoming caution. Adriano picked up the cello, settling in with the ease of long practice. And when he began to play, the world disappeared. The music that flowed from the instrument was sad and beautiful, full of ancient pain and fragile hope. Bach, she recognized. Suite No. 1 in G major. He played with his eyes closed, completely lost in the music, and Valentina saw another side of him. Not the mafia boss, not the dangerous man, just someone who felt deeply and used music to express what words could not. As the final note faded into silence, Valentina realized there were tears in her eyes. That was beautiful. Adriano opened his eyes, and for a moment, they were completely unguarded. Thank you. Where did you learn that? My mother was a musician before she married my father. She insisted that we all learn an instrument. She said that music feeds the soul when everything else fails. He carefully stored the cello. She was right. That night, lying in her guest room, which had become her temporary sanctuary, Valentina reflected on the layers she was uncovering in Adriano Nero. The man was a living paradox, brutal yet gentle, dangerous yet protective, a criminal yet governed by a stricter code of honor than many lawmen. And against all judgment, against all logic, she was beginning to care for him, not just as a savior or a means to an end, but as a person. This is dangerous, she told herself firmly. Don't fall in love with the man who saved you. That's the first step toward becoming an emotional hostage. But even as the thoughts formed, she knew she was lying to herself. The process had already begun, and Valentina had a terrible feeling that there was no way to stop it. The third week brought a change of pace. Valentina was physically strong enough to begin real training, and Adriano didn't believe in doing things halfway. He woke her at dawn, taking her to a private gym hidden on a lower level of the building. Marco was there, wearing workout clothes, smiling in a way that immediately made Valentina nervous. Do you know how to fight? Marco asked. No. Great. That means I don't have to break bad habits. He tossed her some boxing gloves. Put them on. Let's start with the basics. The next 2 hours were torture. Marco was a relentless instructor, repeatedly correcting her positioning, making her practice punches and blocks until her muscles burned. Adriano watched from the sidelines, occasionally offering advice, but mostly letting Marco lead. Why am I learning to fight? Valentina gasped during a water break. I thought it was about paperwork and legalities. It's about both of you, Adriano replied. But you need to be able to defend yourself when negotiations fail. And they will fail, Valentina. Lorenzo won't give up peacefully. Teach me weapons, then. That would be more efficient. Weapons come after you master your own body. A weapon without basic training is more dangerous to you than to your enemies. Marco clapped his hands. Break is over. 20 minutes of groundwork. Valentina groaned but obeyed. And as she struggled through another set of exercises that made every muscle protest, she began to understand. This wasn't just about physical defense. It was about rebuilding her confidence, about proving to herself that her body wasn't just a broken tool, but a weapon she could control. The afternoons were dedicated to a different kind of education. Adriano would sit her in his office, scattering documents across the desk. Lorenzo was using his father's company to launder money. Look here. He pointed to financial reports they had acquired through means Valentina suspected were completely illegal. These transactions. Always in multiples of 7,000. Always to the same shell companies. Valentina studied the numbers. Her mind, trained in accounting at university, beginning to see patterns. He's fragmenting it to stay below the bank reporting threshold. Exactly. And these companies? Adriano pulled out another stack of documents, all registered in tax havens, all with the same ghost directors. How did you manage all this? I have people. Adriano smiled slightly. People who are very good at finding information that is supposedly secret. They spent hours dissecting Lorenzo's operations, tracing connections, identifying vulnerabilities. Valentina discovered she had a talent for this, her analytical mind perfectly suited to identifying irregularities and building cases. And Adriano was a patient teacher, explaining the complexities of organized crime with the clarity of a university professor. Lorenzo has 3 main partners, Adriano explained one afternoon, pointing to photographs on a bulletin board they had created. Victor Kozlov of the Bratva, Chen Wei of the Triads, and Antonio Ferretti of the Sicilian Mafia. They all think they have an exclusive agreement with Lorenzo. None of them know about the others. He's playing everyone against themselves, Valentina realized. If they find out, they're going to tear him apart. Literally. Adriano leaned back in his chair. And that's our strategy. We don't kill Lorenzo ourselves. We let his own partners do the job. How? Carefully placed information. Let each faction discover the others. Make them question Lorenzo's loyalty. And then watch as they do our work. His eyes met hers. It's clean, efficient, and you keep your hands relatively clean. Relatively, Valentina repeated. But it's still manipulation that leads to death, yes, and you need to decide if you can live with that. Because once we start, there's no undoing it. Lorenzo dies or you die. There is no third option. Valentina looked at the photographs, at the man who killed her parents, who stole her future, who tried to destroy her, and she made a decision that would fundamentally change who she was. Make it happen. Adriano studied her face for a long moment, searching for doubt. Are you sure? This line, once crossed, I'm sure of it. And she was. For the first time in weeks, Valentina felt completely certain of something. Lorenzo broke me. Time to show him what broken people can become. A slow, predatory smile spread across Adriano's face. Then let's begin. The 4th week marked a transition. Valentina was no longer the broken woman Adriano had found in the alley. Her physical injuries had healed enough for full movement. Her training with Marco had made her stronger, more confident in her own ability to defend herself, and the hours spent studying Lorenzo's operations had transformed her from victim to hunter. I'm ready, she told Adriano one morning, finding him in his office. He glanced up from a report he was reading. Ready for what? To begin with, to make Lorenzo pay. For everything. Adriano studied her face, searching for doubt or fear. But Valentina stared back firmly, and what he saw in her eyes made something tighten in his chest. This woman was no longer just a responsibility or a project. She had become a partner, an equal, someone who could stand beside him in the kind of darkness he inhabited. So we begin tonight, he said finally. There's a charity event at the Grand Palazzo. Lorenzo will be there, as will several of his business partners. It's time for his first public appearance. Valentina's blood ran cold. He's going to recognize me. That's the point. Lorenzo thinks you're too dead or broken to matter. Seeing you alive, strong, and clearly under my protection will destabilize him. Make him make mistakes. Adriano stood up, approaching her. But you need to understand what you're getting yourself into. The moment you appear by my side, you become a target. Not just for Lorenzo, but for anyone who sees me as an enemy. I'm already a target, Valentina pointed out. At least this way I can fight back. A smile touched Adriano's lips. You've changed. In the last few weeks. You're more difficult, more calculated. You taught me well. No. He touched her face gently, his thumb brushing her cheek. It's always been there for you. I just helped you find it. The intimacy of the gesture made Valentina's heart race. They were close, very close, and for the first time, she didn't recoil. Instead, she leaned in for the touch, her eyes meeting his. Adriano, I know, he said softly. I feel it too, but that complicates everything. For a moment, Valentina thought he was going to kiss her. She could see the desire in his eyes, the tension in his jaw as he fought the impulse. But then he pulled away, the loss of his touch leaving her strangely cold. Later, he said, his voice rough. When Lorenzo is finished and you're safe, then we can explore this. But not now. Not when emotions can make us careless. Valentina wanted to argue. She wanted to pull him back, break through his careful control. But she understood. In his world, the world she now inhabited, distraction meant death. So she simply nodded, swallowing her disappointment. Later. Then, he agreed, something like a promise in his eyes. That night, Valentina stood before a mirror, wearing a dress Adriano had provided. It was dark red, the color of aged wine or dried blood, elegant, but not ostentatious. It hugged her curves, showcasing the strength she had built through weeks of training. Her healed arm bore only a thin scar where the broken bone had pierced the skin. She didn't try to hide it. She left it visible, proof of what she had survived. Makeup had covered the last traces of bruises on her face, but her eyes told the whole story. They were no longer the eyes of a victim. They were the eyes of someone who had looked death in the eye and chosen to fight back. Tough, determined, dangerous in his own right. You look stunning, said Adriano's voice from the doorway. Valentina turned around. He looked devastating in a black tuxedo, impeccably tailored to accentuate his broad shoulders and narrow waist. His hair was combed back, his beard perfectly trimmed, and the scar on his face only added to his dangerous appearance. He held a jewelry box, offering it to her. These belong to my mother, he said as she opened them to reveal a set of rare black pearls. She wore them when she needed courage. I thought you might like to borrow that courage tonight. Tears stung Valentina's eyes. The gesture, coming from a man who rarely showed emotion, meant more than any expensive gift. Adriano, I can't. You can. And you will. He took the necklace from the box, moving behind her to fasten it around her neck. His fingers brushed against her skin, sending shivers down her spine. You're not alone in this, Valentina. Remember that. No matter what happens tonight, I'm right by your side. Valentina turned to face him, the proximity taking her breath away. What if Lorenzo tries something? He won't just let this happen. Let him try. He'll quickly learn that there are consequences for touching what's mine. Adriano's eyes hardened. And you, Valentina Costa, are under my protection. Anyone who hurts you answers to me. I'm not yours, she whispered, echoing the words she'd said weeks ago. But this time, they sounded different, less like a protest and more like a question. Not yet, Adriano replied, his voice low and intense. But when all this is over, when you are free to choose without debt or danger hanging over you, I will ask, and I hope your answer will be different. Before Valentina could answer, Marco knocked on the door. The car is ready. We need to go if we want to arrive on time. The moment had broken, but something had changed between them. An unspoken promise, a future being woven from threads of danger and desire. Valentina took Adriano's hand, intertwining their fingers. Let's finish this. The Grand Palazzo was teeming with Bella Vista's elite. Politicians in expensive tuxedos conversed with businessmen whose fortunes were built on questionable foundations. Philanthropy and crime blended so seamlessly that it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. This was the world where men like Lorenzo thrived, where wealth and connections created their own laws. The entrance of Valentina and Adriano caused immediate ripples. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Heads turned. Whispers rippled through the ornate ballroom like wind through wheat fields. Some people looked shocked. Others seemed downright horrified. Everyone knew who Adriano Nero was. And now everyone was wondering who the woman on his arm was, wearing his colors, wearing his late mother's jewelry. Lorenzo was on the other side of the room, talking to a group of businessmen. When he saw Valentina, his glass of whiskey almost slipped from his hand. Color drained from his face so quickly that for a moment he seemed about to faint. He blinked several times, as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Then his expression changed from shock to anger, to cold calculation. Breathe, Adriano murmured in her ear, his hand squeezing hers reassuringly. You're okay. Let him come to us. Give him rope to hang himself. Valentina raised her chin, meeting Lorenzo's gaze across the crowded hall. She didn't lower her eyes. She showed no fear. She simply stared back with all the coldness she had learned, letting him see what she had become. Not the frightened niece he could intimidate, but something far more dangerous. Lorenzo apologized for their conversation, crossing the hall with measured steps. When he reached them, his mask of civility was back in place, but Valentina could see the cracks. Valentina, what a surprise. We were so worried when you disappeared. Disappeared? Valentina's voice cut through, clear and cold, each word perfectly enunciated, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Is this what you call sending your men to beat me and throw me in an alley to die? Lorenzo's mask slipped for a fraction of a second. You're clearly confused. The trauma you went through. I'm not confused. Valentina stepped forward, and Lorenzo instinctively recoiled. I remember every word you said, every confession, especially the part about killing my parents. Absolute silence fell over the part of the hall within earshot. People turned away, abandoning even the pretense of not hearing. This was a first-rate scandal, and in Bella Vista, scandals were currency. Be careful with your accusations, Lorenzo hissed, his eyes darting to Adriano, who stood at a respectful but clearly protective distance. Especially when you appear on the arm of him. Adriano Nero saved my life, Valentina said loudly enough for several nearby guests to hear clearly. After his men left me for dead. I have to say, Uncle, you should have hired better. They didn't finish the job. Lorenzo's jaw clenched so tightly that Valentina could hear his teeth grinding. This isn't over. No, Adriano finally spoke, his voice low, but carrying an authority that made Lorenzo pale. It's not, but it's going to end very badly for you, Costa. You should have left the girl alone. You have no idea what you're getting yourself into, Nero. The Costa company is protected. I have powerful allies. I did, Adriano corrected, a cold smile touching his lips. But allies tend to disappear when they discover you're playing them all against each other. Confusion crossed Lorenzo's face. What are you talking about? You'll find out soon. Very soon. Adriano offered his arm to Valentina. Come on, darling. The air here has suddenly become unpleasant. They left Lorenzo there, trembling with impotent rage and growing fear, and Valentina felt something new unfold in her chest. Not revenge, not hatred, power. For the first time in 5 years, she wasn't the powerless orphan Lorenzo could control. She was someone to be feared, and it felt incredibly liberating. "You were perfect," Adriano said, as they were back in the car, the city passing by through the tinted windows. "Better than I expected. I only told the truth. In public, where he couldn't refute it without further incriminating himself. Now everyone in Bella Vista's elite knows there's trouble between you two. They know I'm involved, and they're speculating." Adriano looked at her, admiration evident in his eyes. "You played the game perfectly. I learned from the best." The corner of Adriano's mouth curled up. "I don't know if that's a compliment or an accusation." "Both," Valentina echoed her words from weeks ago, and they both laughed. The sound filled the car, washing away some of the night's tension. But when their laughter faded, another tension took its place, hotter, more dangerous. "Valentina," Adriano began. "No," she interrupted him, placing her hand on his cheek. "No more waiting. No more later. Now." She kissed him, pouring out all the gratitude, fear, and longing she had been building up for weeks into that kiss. Adriano froze for a heartbeat, then pulled her close, deepening the kiss with an intensity that stole her breath. His hands framed her face as if she were something precious, something that could break if he held on too tightly. When they parted, both were breathless. "This changes everything," Adriano whispered against her lips. "I know. I don't care. Lorenzo is going to use this against us. He's going to try to hurt you to get to me. Let him try." Valentina kissed him again, more gently this time. "I'm tired of living in fear. I'm tired of postponing happiness because it might not be safe. I want this. I want you. Now, not later." Adriano's eyes searched hers, looking for doubt, but all he found was certainty. "Then have me," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Now and forever if you let me." That night, when they made love for the first time, it was tender and fierce at the same time. Hands exploring skin, breaths mingling with whispered promises that neither of them was sure they could keep. But in the darkness of Adriano's room, enveloped in silk sheets, nothing else mattered besides this moment, this connection, this choice to love, even when everything said not to. Then, lying curled up in Adriano's arms, her head on his chest, listening to his steady heartbeat, Valentina finally felt safe. "No matter what happens," she whispered, "I don't regret this." Adriano kissed the top of his head. "Neither did I. Never." And in that moment, they believed that love could be enough, that together they could survive what was to come. But storms were brewing on the horizon, and neither love nor power would be enough to stop what Lorenzo was about to unleash. Continuation of the second part of the script. 12,000 words. Lorenzo's response came 3 days later, and it was as brutal as expected. Valentina was in Adriano's office, reviewing financial documents they had acquired through questionable methods, when Marco burst through the door with an expression that sent shivers down her spine. "They captured Sofia," he said without preamble. Valentina's world stopped. Sofia Martinez had been her best friend since high school, the only person besides her parents who had always believed in her, supported her, and remained loyal even when Lorenzo spread lies about Valentina after her parents' death. And now, Sofia was in danger because of her. "Where?" Adriano demanded, already pulling out his phone. "Warehouse in the Port District. The abandoned one on Colombo Street," Lorenzo texted. Marco handed over his own phone, showing a photo that made Valentina gasp. Sofia was tied to a chair, duct tape over her mouth, terror evident in her eyes. Below the photo, a simple message: "Niece for her friend. Dusk. Come alone or she dies." "No," Adriano said immediately, seeing the decision forming on Valentina's face. "It's an obvious trap. He wants you both dead. And she'll kill Sofia if I don't go." Valentina's voice trembled. "She has nothing to do with this. She's innocent. And that's exactly why he took her. He knows you'll trade your life for hers." Adriano gripped Valentina's shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "I won't let you fall into a trap. She's not asking for permission." Valentina stepped back, already moving towards the door. "Sofia is like a sister to me, the only real family I have besides you and Marco and Dr. Santos. I won't abandon her." "Then we won't abandon her." Adriano pulled her back, turning her to face him. But we'll do this my way, with planning, with support, not stupid heroism that will get you both killed. How much time do we have? Marco checked his phone. Dusk is in 4 hours. Enough. Adriano was already calling his team, giving orders in rapid Italian. When he hung up, his face was a mask of fierce concentration. We're going to get your friend back, and we're going to use this to finish Lorenzo off once and for all. The next few hours were a whirlwind of preparation. Valentina dressed in dark, practical clothes, putting a bulletproof vest under her jacket. Marco armed her with a small pistol, reviewing security procedures they had practiced but never imagined she would actually need to use. Adriano coordinated his team, positioning snipers on rooftops around the warehouse, hackers cutting security camera feeds in the area, drivers preparing escape routes. The plan is simple, Adriano explained as they reviewed the warehouse layout on a tablet. You go in through the front, make Lorenzo think she's alone. Meanwhile, my team goes in from the sides and back. The moment they confirm Sofia is alive, we take you both out and grab Lorenzo. What if he has more people than you expect? So we improvised. Adriano's eyes met hers, dark with barely concealed worry. But you have to promise, Valentina. If everything goes wrong, if you see an opportunity to escape, you run. Don't try to be a hero. Just run. I'm not going to leave Sofia. And I won't leave you. Her hands framed her face. But if I have to choose between saving you or taking Lorenzo, I choose you. Every time. Tears stung Valentina's eyes. Adriano, I love you, he said abruptly, the words coming out like a forced confession. I know it's fast. I know it's complicated. But I've gone 42 years without feeling this, and I'm not going to let you die without knowing. I love you too, Valentina whispered, kissing him with all the tenderness, fear, and fierce love she felt. And we'll get through this, both of us, together with Sofia, and then we'll make Lorenzo pay for every tear, every nightmare, every life he destroyed. Promise? Promise. The warehouse in Porto Velho smelled of rust, sea salt, and ancient violence, empty except for echoes and shadows that seemed to breathe in the dim light. Sofia was tied to a chair in the center of the cavernous space, bruised but alive, tears streaming down her face. Duct tape covered her mouth. Her eyes widened when she saw Valentina appear in the doorway, fear and relief mingling in her expression. Lorenzo stood beside her like a spider admiring its web. He wasn't alone. 6 armed men were positioned around the perimeter, weapons visible, eyes cold and professional. These weren't the same thugs who had beaten Valentina in the alley. They were real killers, and their presence made Valentina's stomach churn. Valentina, Lorenzo called, his voice echoing off the metal walls. It's so good of you to join us, and I see you came alone, as I instructed. Let Sofia go, Valentina said, forcing her voice to remain firm. She has nothing to do with this. Ah, but it has everything to do with this. Look, you've become a problem. A much bigger problem than I anticipated. Thinking you could challenge me publicly, showing up on Adriano Nero's arm as if you were untouchable. Lorenzo walked around Sofia, his fingers brushing menacingly through her hair. Time for you to learn that no one challenges me with impunity. Is it about money? Valentina tried to reason, although she knew it was useless. The company? Keep it all. Just let Sofia go. It's not about money, dear niece. It never was. It's about respect. About power. About making sure everyone knows what happens to those who defy me. Cold smile. You two died tonight. Valentina should have died weeks ago. And Sofia, well, she's unlucky to be your friend. Lorenzo, please, please, he laughed, the sound echoing ominously. You're begging now? Where was that humility when you were making a scene at the Grand Palazzo? You killed my parents! Yes, I killed him. And you know what? I don't regret it one bit. His father was weak, sentimental. He squandered the company on noble causes when he could have made a real fortune. So I removed him and finally got the company working for real. The rage that exploded through Valentina was blinding. She lunged forward, not thinking, merely reacting to the casual admission about her parents' murder. But Lorenzo was expecting it. One of the armed men intercepted her, grabbing her brutally and throwing her to the ground. Pain shot through her healing ribs and she coughed, struggling to breathe. Pathetic, Lorenzo spat. You really thought you could beat me? You, a little girl playing criminal with Adriano Nero? You know nothing about this world. But as Lorenzo spoke, Valentina caught sight of movement in the shadows, figures gliding silently through side entrances. Adriano's team, taking up positions, She just needed to keep Lorenzo talking long enough. "You're right," she said, forcing herself to stay on the ground, looking defeated. "I don't know anything, but I learned one thing from Adriano." "What?" "Perfect timing." All hell broke loose. Adriano's men attacked from all directions simultaneously, weapons roaring, orders shouted in Italian. Lorenzo's men returned fire, but were caught off guard, their positions already compromised by snipers Adriano had positioned on surrounding rooftops. Glass shattered, metal ricocheted, and in the midst of it all, Valentina crawled toward Sofia. "Take cover!" Adriano shouted, appearing out of nowhere, his body shielding Valentina as bullets flew. He fired with deadly accuracy, taking down 2 of Lorenzo's men in quick succession. Marco appeared on the other side, already cutting Sofia's ropes, pulling her for cover behind a pile of old crates. Lorenzo ran, of course. Men like him always ran when faced with real consequences. He darted toward a back door, disappearing into the darkness beyond. Adriano made a move to follow him, but Valentina pulled him back. "Let him go. He's going to escape." "No." Valentina's voice was absolutely certain. "His partners are waiting outside. Remember? All the information you leaked about him pitting the Bratva and Triads against each other. They won't let him leave this district." Understanding dawned on Adriano's face. He had orchestrated this perfectly. Lorenzo ran straight into the arms of men who wanted her head. "You're brilliant," he said, kissing her roughly. "Absolutely brilliant." The shootout ended as quickly as it began. Lorenzo's men lay dead or wounded, outnumbered and outmatched by Adriano's professional team. Sofia was safe, trembling but alive, being checked on by Dr. Santos, who had arrived with a medical kit. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the warehouse, Lorenzo Costa was discovering that there were places far worse than prison. Adriano received a call 20 minutes later. He listened in silence, his expression unreadable. When he hung up, he looked at Valentina. "Lorenzo is dead. Bratva found him first. It wasn't kind. Valentina should have felt something. Triumph, relief, even sadness for the man who had been her uncle. But all she felt was emptiness. It's over then." "Yes." Adriano pulled her into his arms. "It's over. You're safe. Sofia is safe, and your inheritance can be restored. But my parents are still dead. 5 years of my life have been stolen." "No," Sofia said, her voice hoarse but firm, joining them despite Dr. Santos's protests. "Those years weren't stolen. You survived. You grew stronger. You found Adriano." She looked between them. "And now you have a choice. You can let the past define you, or you can build a future your parents would be proud of." The tears finally came. Years of pain and anger and loss pouring from Valentina in sobs that shook her entire body. Adriano held her through it all, a firm rock in her crumbling and rebuilding world. And when she finally managed to breathe again, Valentina felt something change. The weight she had carried for 5 years hadn't disappeared, but it had become lighter, bearable, something that would no longer define her. "Let's go home," Adriano said gently. "Both you and Sofia, and tomorrow we'll start rebuilding." "Home," Valentina repeated, the word feeling strange but right. "Your penthouse?" "Our coverage. If you stay." "I'm going to stay." It wasn't even a question. "Today and forever, if you have me." Adriano's smile was slow and genuine, full of promise. "Always." Epilogue. 10 years later. The morning arrived softly through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the city of Bella Vista in shades of gold and pink. Valentina Costanero stood on the balcony of her penthouse, now truly hers as much as Adriano's, watching the sunrise with a cup of hot coffee warming her hands. The ring on her finger, simple silver with a rare black pearl, caught the light, shimmering softly. 10 years had passed since that night in the warehouse. 10 years since Lorenzo died and freed Valentina from the nightmare that had been her 20s. Her father's company had been restored, the forged documents exposed, her inheritance returned. But Valentina didn't just restore it, she transformed it. Costa Import and Export was now a model of ethical business practice, specializing in fair trade and sustainability, employing hundreds and donating millions to causes her parents would have supported. Adriano had kept his word too. Slowly, systematically, he legitimized his operations. It wasn't easy. There was resistance from within his organization, threats from rival factions who saw him as weakening. But with Valentina by his side, advising on legal strategy, supporting him when doubts arose, he succeeded. The criminal operations that defined the Nero Empire were gradually replaced by legitimate investments, real estate, technology, businesses that could withstand scrutiny. Of course, whispers lingered. Bella Vista had a long memory. People still knew who Adriano Nero had been, but now they also knew who he had become. Philanthropist, businessman, a man who used wealth and connections to protect the vulnerable instead of exploiting them. Arms wrapped around Valentina from behind, and she leaned into the familiar touch of Adriano. "You woke up early," he murmured against her hair. "I couldn't sleep. It's my birthday today." "I know." He kissed her temple. 28 years since the night everything changed. It wasn't her birthday, not in the traditional sense, but every year on this date, Valentina marked the day Adriano found her in that alley, the day their life truly began. They celebrated it silently, just the two of them, remembering how far they had come. "Do you regret it?" she asked, the question now ritualistic. "Stopping that night? Saving a stranger? Never. Not for a second." His answer, as always, came without hesitation. "You saved me as much as I saved you. You showed me that men like me can change, that redemption is possible." Valentina turned in his arms, looking at the man who had been a mafia boss and become her husband. Gray hairs at the temples now, lines around his eyes from years of laughter he never thought he'd have, but the scar still marked his face, a reminder of who he had been, the journey he had taken. "Daddy! Mommy!" The cheerful voice of their 6-year-old daughter, Lucia, burst from inside the penthouse. She ran onto the balcony, her dark hair flying, her smile as bright as the sun. Marco and Isabella, their 3-year-old twins, followed, stumbling and laughing as they chased after their older sister. Adriano caught Lucia, spinning her around until she cried out in joy. Valentina caught the twins before they could run straight off the balcony, kissing their round faces. Their family, built of ashes and blood, and a choice to love even when everything told them not to. "Aunt Sophia is coming for breakfast," Lucia announced. "She's bringing cookies." Sophia had become an inseparable part of their lives. She never married, preferring to dedicate herself to opening a network of shelters for women fleeing domestic violence. Valentina financed the operation through donations from Costa Import, and together they had helped hundreds of women rebuild their lives. Marco, the original Adriano's right-hand man, had married Dr. Santos, to everyone's surprise and delight. They lived in a house on the same street, frequently looked after Valentina and Adriano's children, and were part of the extended family they had built. As Valentina watched Adriano play with his children, Sophia arrived with hugs and cookies, and Dr. Santos and Marco show up for the Sunday breakfast that had become a tradition. She felt overwhelming gratitude, not for what she had lost. Her parents, those stolen years of youth, innocence she could never recover, but for what she had gained. "Penny for your thoughts," Adriano said later, when the children were napping, and the adults were chatting softly in the living room. "Just thinking about how strange life is, how a single moment can change everything. If only you had walked right past that night. But I didn't pass." He took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "And you didn't give up even when everything told you to. We met when it was most unlikely, and we built something beautiful from ugly circumstances. Do you think my parents would be proud of what I've become, of the choices I've made?" "Yes." Sophia's reply came from across the room. "Roberto and Maria would have been incredibly proud. You took their legacy and made it better. You transformed pain into purpose, and you found love in the process." Tears stung Valentina's eyes, even after all these years. Thinking about her parents still hurt, but it was a gentle pain now, like a muscle healing after an injury. Always a part of her, but no longer paralyzing. "For second chances," Marco toasted, raising his glass of wine, "and for people brave enough to take them. For second chances," they all chanted, glasses clinking. That night, after the guests had left and the children were asleep, Valentina and Adriano sat on the balcony under the stars once more. The city sprawled below, millions of lives being lived, each with its own stories of loss, love, and survival. "Do you know what I learned?" Valentina said softly. "That night in the alley, and every day since then?" "What?" "Strength isn't about never breaking. It's about choosing to get up even when broken. About accepting help when pride tells you to refuse. About loving even when love seems more dangerous than hate." She looked at him. "You taught me all of that." "No," Adriano countered, pulling her closer. "You already knew. I just gave you space to remember." They remained there as night deepened, two survivors who had found each other in the darkness and chosen to build light. Because in the end, no matter how abandoned you are, no matter how alone you feel, there is always a chance of salvation. There is always someone willing to stop when others pass by. There is always love waiting in the most unexpected places. And this truth, forged in dark alleys and sealed with courage and fierce love, is the only one that truly matters. Not where you begin, not what is taken from you, but what you choose to build with the pieces that remain, and with whom you choose to build it. Valentina Costanero, once left for dead in an alley by those who should have protected her, now stood on her own rooftop, surrounded by the love she chose, the family she built, the future she claimed, and she knew, with absolute certainty, that every scar, every nightmare, every moment of pain had been worth it, because they brought her here, to this man, to this life, to this impossible and perfectly imperfect love. I love you, she whispered toward the stars, toward the memory of her parents, toward the universe that had broken her, and then given her Adriano to help her rebuild herself. And I love you, Adriano replied, not just to her, but to all the forces that had brought them together against all odds, today and forever, until the stars burn and the world ends. You are mine, and I am yours, forever, Valentina agreed. And for the first time in 10 years, she believed it completely, without doubt, without fear, just pure certainty that no matter what the future held, they would face it together, because they were survivors, fighters, lovers who chose each other when everything said not to, and that made them indestructible. Thank you so much for listening until the end. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any stories. Leave a comment below. What would you have done in Valentina's place? Would you have trusted Adriano? Until the next story, I hope to see you here tomorrow. A big hug.